Ladies and gentlemen, I suppose the first thing I should do is introduce myself. My name is Paddy, and I'm obviously one of the three best men. Woo! Woo! Before I start the speech, I'd just like to say how fantastic the bridesmaids, Jennifer and Verity, look today. And you definitely deserve a round of applause. And I can't forget the bride. I just want to echo what Tim said. And Jen, you look absolutely stunning today in the church. Mike, you just look stunned, pal. First of all, I'd like to thank Mike for asking me to be one of his best men, because it's a huge privilege, and obviously it's a real honour as well, but especially considering he's got about 4,000 friends, so it does mean a lot. But I'd also like to thank him for dressing me up in this suit today, because I don't know if he's trying to get revenge for what I'm about to say, but I've had a look around and I appear to be the only one wearing flares, so thanks very much, Mike. I really appreciate that. You're a legend. And one last, I really have to say this, it's been a huge privilege to sit on the same table as my lifelong hero, George Best. Or Gordon, as he's known to his friends. I first met Mike, or Chippy as he's known here in Guernsey, when we were both living in the same staff house, working for PricewaterhouseCoopers as accountants. We're trying to be accountants. We immediately hit it off, and we shared a mutual love of Liam and Noel Gallagher, Saturday night after parties, and that plane goes. And listened to power ballads with stupid hats on our heads. And I'll never forget my first night out with Mike. He was telling all these amazing tales about growing up in inner city.
Do it!
Growing up in the he was telling loads of amazing tales about inner city life in the mean streets of London town. And the daily struggle he had growing up in the hood. So he called it. What he neglected to mention was that he actually lived in a 5-bedroom detached house in the outskirts of Bromley. Mike he frequently tried to dispel the negative stereotypes about surrounding so-called... I'll start that again. Mike frequently tried to dispel the negative stereotypes surrounding growing up in the hood, as he called it. And he actually told me once that growing up in the ghetto had made him the man he is today. Mike went on to tell us that he'd been a bit of a wild child growing up in Bromley, and he'd actually formed a gang at the age of 14 years old. He recalled the story of having to show a bunch of Millwall fans who were on his turf who the real governors of the manor were. And he also claimed that the gang was really notorious throughout the whole Bromley area. Little did we know that the notorious Geology Rocks gang was little more than a book club. And I remember an incident a few years later which also led me to question Mike's so-called gang member credentials. I was on a night out with Mike and Dave Hopkins, who's here tonight, and we were outside a takeaway which was very close to Mike's house. And just to set the scene here a bit, this is Mike's favourite takeaway. It's called the Rib Shack. And Mike would often frequent this particular takeaway, and he'd always be seen ordering his favourite dish of chips and cheese with extra cheese and extra chips. So there was a bit of trouble happening outside this takeaway, and a bit of aggro. There's two groups, and it really did look like it was going to kick off. So I remember looking at Dave Hopkins, and we couldn't find Chippy anywhere. So we're actually starting to be a bit worried, because we're thinking, does he get caught up in this ruckus? And it got even more worrying when the police turned up and started arresting people. So 15 minutes had gone by, still no sign of Mike, and I just remember that a police car pulled away, and out of the corner of my eye I could see what appeared to be a little fat pregnant lady roll out from underneath a parked car. And lo and behold, it wasn't a little fat pregnant lady, it was Mike. So Mike proceeded to tell us that he had dropped, as soon as he saw the fight break out, he dropped his phone underneath his car, and he spent the last 15 minutes looking for it. Both Dave and I agreed that was a perfectly plausible explanation. As many of you know, Mike is an accountant who works for PwC, but what may surprise you that it's not the only three-lettered organisation that he's a member of. In fact, Chippy is one of the founding members of AWC, also known as Arm Wrestling Club. Arm Wrestling Club is a little known but very well respected clandestine organisation that was founded in Guernsey in June 2006 at approximately 4 a.m. after returning from Follies, which is a local nightclub. Now, the members of Arm Wrestling Club would meet on a regular basis, usually after midnight, and always after consuming about 9 pints of strong lager. What many of you may not be aware, there are a number of factors that can play a part in someone's success in arm wrestling. Basic technique, overall arm strength are two of the greatest contributing factors to winning an arm wrestling match. But you get other factors like endurance, grip size, reaction time, even just basic hand-eye coordination. They all play a part. Unfortunately for Mike, he possessed none of these attributes. So you won't be surprised to hear that Mike had a flawless record in AWC. Between the period of 2006 and 2010, Michael Edwin Wilfred Carpenter, that's his real name as well, I didn't make that up, had a total of 73 arm wrestles. Out of the 73 arm wrestles that he had taken part in, he lost 72 of them. And he suffered 1 disqualification for using both hands. He tarnished this permanent record even further with an unfortunate biting incident in the summer of 2008, and he was duly suspended from the club for a period of a month. Now, in the spirit of redemption, Mike has asked me to open this up to the floor, and he said that he really would like to break his duck at arm wrestling today, and he's asked me to ask you all if there's an opponent out there. Now, well, that will tie in with what I'm about to say.
Jamie Dixon!
In the interest of fairness and to give the guy a chance, it is his wedding day after all, can I request that only girls and small children offer up their services? I've probably said too much and I've given a lot away because, as you know, the first rule of Arm Wrestling Club is do not talk about Arm Wrestling Club. Another thing I was told not to mention was the stag do, and as the saying goes, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But seriously, I've seen more of Mike's body than I thought was humanly possible. There's images in my head that'll just never go away, and I really mean this. I think I'm scarred for life because I haven't slept in 3 weeks. So the less said about the stag do and Chippy's skin-tight fluorescent green mankini, the better. I was also told not to mention Bangkok 2007, Koh Phi Phi 2008, Phuket 2008, Cardiff 2010, Benicassim 2010, Ibiza 2014, the 400-pound lingerie from Selfridges, the case of the missing flip-flop, or Miak, and Jen has also specifically warned me against mentioning the chat-up line that Chippy used to woo her all those years ago. Are we saying that or not, Jen? What do you think? Right. Okay. So I promise I'm not going to go there.
Just do it! Do it!
I'll just get kicked out, there's no point. I mentioned earlier that Mike's nickname here in Guernsey is Chippy, but there's also been a few others over the years, and they're normally associated with his more admirable characteristics, namely his organisational skills, or lack of, his timekeeping, or lack of, and his fluctuating waistline, lots of. Over the years we've had Mr. Slow, Captain Jack Sparrow, Chippy, Chip Dog, Chippopotamus, Chubby Chippy, Chubs, Chips and Cheese with extra cheese, Miak, Mikey Pops, Mwek, Wolf, and Rolf. Another, Tim actually alluded to this earlier on, but another nickname was Tom Cruise, and rumours that Chippy gave this nickname to himself have yet to be substantiated. But the reality is that Chippy and Tom Cruise do have a few things in common. They're both 5'4" and they both wear Cuban heels. Now, before I pass you over to Paul, I would just like the bride and groom to do one thing for me. If you could both turn and face each other. And if you could place your hands on the table. Jen, if you could just put your hand on top of Mike's, and I would just like you to look deep into each other's eyes. I'd just like to let you know that statistics... I knew that was going to happen.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Just like to let you know that statistically speaking, you're now looking at the person who's most likely to kill you. And you should always remember that. I can't believe I couldn't pronounce that word either.
How many times do you practice it?
So in all seriousness, I can genuinely say Jen and Mikey make an amazing team. You really complement each other really well, and I couldn't imagine one of you without the other. Jen, you're not only Mike's best friend, but his life coach, his personal assistant, his manager, and his all-round organiser, and I know for a fact he'd be lost without you. So I would just like to ask you one more time, raise your glasses to the bride and groom.